So you guys, it turns out after Andor and before A New Hope, there's like a whole other movie. We're going back to look at Rogue One now that we have enjoyed 2 seasons of Andor, and wanted to see if this movie plays differently now that we have more backstory on who Cassian Andor is and where he came from.
We'll take the next chance. And the next. You're rebels, aren't you?
You know what's so funny is I went back and I rewatched our What the Flick review of Rogue One. We did this like 14-minute long spoiler conversation, you and me and Bibbs. And it was all so new at this point, like these characters in this part of the Star Wars world that like we couldn't remember characters' names. Like, what's Diego Luna's name? Cassian? Something like that.
We were so young and innocent then.
We were. 2016, December 2016, Rogue One came out, and I had not rewatched it since.
Me neither.
So I was really curious, like you were, to see, you know, how will it play differently now that we have watched Andor and caught up. The very end of Andor, he is like getting in the ship with K2 to go and, you know, find the person that has the thing that's going to help him blow up the Death Star. I mean, basically, you know, you guys have seen this movie. It's stealing the plans to blow up the Death Star. But
yes.
it begins before then with young Jyn Erso as a little girl. Her dad is Galen Erso, who is the architect of the Death Star. The Empire, led by Ben Mendelsohn, you know, because he's in that too. He's all over the place. He tries to get Galen Erso to come back and finish the Death Star, and Galen Erso now knows what this thing is about. It's Mads Mikkelsen playing a good guy. Sometimes he does that. And so, you know, sends the little girl away because he knows that she's going to be in trouble. They're gonna harm her. So, cut to later on, she's Felicity Jones, and she is in prison. I'm not even going to get into all the rigmarole of how this happens. She hooks up with Diego Luna, who is Cassian Andor, who is a leader of the rebellion, as we have seen from the 2 seasons of Andor. He and his refurbished droid. He was like a battle droid.
Yeah.
He was like he's meant to do destructive things, but now he's nice, and he's voiced by Alan Tudyk, and he's there for deadpan comic relief. And so it's how they have to, you know, along with Riz Ahmed, who was a pilot. He was an Empire pilot. Yes.
Who Galen Erso gave him the intel to pass along to Saw Gerrera.
Yeah, Saw Gerrera is in this, and at this point he is like a cyborg, and he's just huffing whatever it is all the time. Is that the gasoline that he was rhapsodizing about at the end of season 2, do you think?
Oh God, I hadn't thought about it. I was just thinking of it as like a Blue Velvet shout out, maybe.
Right, that too, or Morton Joe or something like that. But like he's breathing it in, and he needs it to survive. So, you know, it takes a little while to get going. It takes a little while for all the pieces to come together. But then that third act, the actual, you know, when it gets going and the heist is all happening and the pieces, and they got to go to the thing with the doohickey and find the piece and
climb in the thing.
Yeah, and Darth Vader is hot on their heels. It gets a lot better. It really picks up, but it is gorgeous from the beginning. So Gareth Edwards directed this. Greg Fraser is his DP, who also shot The Creator, which in retrospect, The Creator looks a lot like Rogue One.
Yeah,
as far as like the pastel kind of misty sunsets and the vistas. And Gareth Edwards also did one of the better Godzillas in terms of just like the enormity of, you know, like looking up at the creature.
Agree to disagree on that one, but go on.
But the look of it is pretty impressive.
Sure.
Is it not? From a visual effects and cinematography perspective, Greg Fraser also shot The Batman. And so it looks fantastic all the time. And it is, you know, stunningly beautiful and in ways that are like delicate, but also enormous. But there are some really questionable choices here. Like, example, CGI Grand Moff Tarkin still looks terrible. He looks like a Chuck E. Cheese animatronic.
And yet looks better than CGI Princess Leia.
I mean, they both look bad, right?
Yeah,
well, we said this in our early review as well. So I cared more about this because I had just watched 2 seasons of incredible television.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. What I was reminded of in looking at this again was, I don't know how familiar you might be with the Swamp Thing comic book.
I'm not.
Okay. Well, Swamp Thing was originally created as sort of like your basic sort of man monster, you know, creature kind of, you know, horror comic. And then Alan Moore, who later created Watchmen, came in for a stint, and it's this sort of now legendary run of Swamp Thing, and he totally sort of retconned the character and was like, well, actually he's not this guy who's been turned into a monster. Actually, that guy died, and a bunch of like swamp things ate his body and formed itself into a consciousness that thought it was this guy. You know, and really kind of used that as a stepping off point to do all sorts of really cool shit with the character and with the universe of the Swamp Thing. So watching this was kind of like Tony Gilroy, who co-wrote the movie, obviously was then able to be like, here's what's interesting. Here's what's provocative. Here's what is relevant to the world that we live in. I'm going to take these pieces of it and make this amazing two seasons of television that provides a depth that this movie is not. This movie is here to like connect this movie to this movie, and like throw in some actiony stuff, and you know, but basically take us to a moment that was like, did we really need to know how Princess Leia got those plans? You know, whatever, sure, okay, fine. But then there's a nugget of an idea in there that Tony Gilroy could then extract and be like, let's talk about how revolutions work. Let's talk about what a rebellion is and how they're formed and who makes them up and what price do they pay for being in that. And then also, what's it like to be a cog in the machine of the empire that's trying to quash that rebellion and that's trying to like commit genocide and do all this stuff. So, you know, I don't think that Rogue One is any better, but I think that it at least becomes a springboard where Tony Gilroy as a creator could be like, let's look at this other stuff here. It's very much in the margins in all of these other movies, if at all, but I want to focus on it because it is the thing that is most human sized and not just pew, pew, pew.
Yeah, and this movie is much more of a straight up action sci-fi movie, whereas Andor was like political thriller, and it was sophisticated and it was subtle. Yeah, and this is very much
this
trying
is a
to
heist picture.
It is. It's a heist picture. It's also trying to like deliver you fan servicey stuff. Like, oh look, for 2 seconds there's C-3PO being uptight and R2 beeping at him. Like they have to give you little things along the way, as you say, the connective tissue. We have to have, you know, Grand Moff Tarkin in some capacity. We've got to have Darth Vader in some capacity. It occurs to me that this is like the first time we're seeing Vader from the end of episode 3 until the beginning of episode 4, right? We don't see Darth Vader at all in Andor.
Right. Yeah. I'm trying to think if he was in any of the other TV shows, like if he's on like the Obi-Wan show, or I don't. Yeah, you might be right.
I think so.
But
and Nick,
they'll tell us in the comments if you're wrong.
Please do. Nick had a good point though. We were watching it together again, which is that like they should really like tease that possibility of Darth Vader and not show it to us until he comes through that corridor and it's dark and you just see like the slash of his red lightsaber through the smoke, and he's like just wasting fools, like like we should just see that. But the fact that we see him early in a scene with Ben Mendelsohn, right, where he like threatens him and like kind of force chokes him and like, oh, you're choking on your words. I think it weakens. I agree with Nick's point that like kind of weakens the power of seeing Vader in full. It also occurred to me like, Anakin, of all the voices you could have chosen, right? I mean, I guess he's wise to choose James Earl Jones's voice to sound super intimidating, but I'm like, interesting. This is you choose to be like quasi British, like I don't know. I guess all because all the Empire people are British who are.
Well, it's how, you know, Leia was British and then wasn't. You know, like it's, you know, it's all over the place in these movies. Yeah, no, Nick's right. Actually, I think saving that reveal would have been great. But also, I will say that the scene with Krennic now lands more because of Andor and because we've gotten to know Krennic more, and he's a bigger, you know, presence in this story than he is if you've just seen Rogue One, where he's this kind of like, who's this guy, where'd he come from, and you know, he's very quickly sort of squashed by you know, Tarkin and Vader. But now that we've gotten to see him being part of this Death Star development and the development of the whole, you know, the destruction of whatever the whatever the planet with the crystals is, you know, the one that used to be the textile plant.
Gorman?
Gorman, thank you. You know, so now that we've seen all of that happen, him being in a room with Vader, I think, means more, you know.
Right. And it shows he is not as powerful as he thinks he is, right?
Right.
We can see him intimidate everybody. We can see him put his finger on Dedra's head, you know, and grab her face to intimidate her. But the look on his face when faced with Vader, was that?
You'll tell the Emperor?
Yeah, I mean, he's like, Ben Mendelsohn is so good in this scene because like he's got to be cowed, and he is. Yeah, and everybody dies at the end of this movie, which is kind of shocking. Like characters we like they kill K2. Like you see, you know, Andor and Jin like hugging as the nuclear blast is headed their way, and that's kind of ballsy. Like everyone that we care about, but thankfully this thing in this pod has gotten to Leia, and so we can have Star Wars.
Yeah, and I mean they always died, obviously, but who they are to us means more now. I mean, not Jin, and actually the recapper for Vulture made a valid point of like, why is Jin making the speech to rally the troops when she just got here? Like, she doesn't even go here. Like it should be Andor, who's been doing this for years and has been part of this cadre, you know. But like, whatever.
Maybe he doesn't want to mansplain rebellion to her, right?
Maybe.
Rebellions are built on hope. That's a good line. You can have that one. It's all yours. Yeah, we get to see Mon Mothma,
yes,
which I always enjoy. Yeah, I think I cared more about this. It is sort of, you know, your ragtag team coming together to pull off this impossible heist, and there's a lot of predictability in that, certainly, but it's also fun, and and there are stakes, and I enjoyed it more. I think we were all kind of mixed on it when we talked about it last time.
Yeah, I'm maybe less mad at it than I was the first time, but I'm still sort of like, I mean, and I'll grant it lands differently because of Andor, but it's because Andor is so fucking great, and because it delves more into things that matter, whether it's in a character emotional way or in a, you know, socio-political thematic way, that it lends heft to this movie that it previously didn't have, for me anyway.
There you go. Do you want to give Rogue One a number?
Oh, no, I don't.
Okay, we don't have to. I guess the numbers we gave
if you haven't seen Andor yet, y'all go see Andor. It's so good. Both seasons are terrific. The second season is basically 4 movies.
Yeah, and we recapped all of it on our Patreon. So
yes,
if you're not already a member of our Patreon, is patreon.com/BeFastAllDay. There's a link to that down in the description. And I was really sad the whole time watching this, thinking like, Andor's going to die, never knowing he had a kid.
That's the of the finale for sure. But you know, I think they set that up along the way about how revolutions are for the future and about for people you'll never know and all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, that very beautifully captures that, and obviously means eventually they'll have an excuse to do a spinoff with, you know, Andor Jr.
with Muppet Baby Andor. Have you watched Rogue One again recently? Do you think differently about it post Andor? Let us know.